What up, y'all? This is Patrick Hayes, and the title of this video is Healthy Boundaries in Relationships, Setting Boundaries and Taking Space. And I wanted to make this video because one of the most important, most powerful things that I've discovered in my love relationships is that a healthy, energetic boundary setting and a healthy amount of taking space has been a huge contributor to the harmony in my relationships. I feel like it's really important for people to get their own time, get their own space, so they can be in their own energy field and that they can know who they are individually and then bring that individual sovereignty back into the relationship so the relationship can flourish. See, a lot of people come from the perspective that, well, if you love somebody, you can just be around them all the time. And yeah, I mean, you could be around them all the time, but is that the best? Is that the most beneficial for both of you? And I would say it isn't, in my experience, and in the experience of many, many other people that I've witnessed and discussed this with. It's kind of like the idea of monocropping. Plants don't flourish as well when they're in a biologically isolated environment, meaning if they're just around one other plant or just around a series of plants that are the same exact plant as them, they don't actually like that. They don't flourish as well. Now, if they were put in an environment that is biodiverse, where there's a lot of different diversity, then the plant actually flourishes more. And then in these environments, as you know, with permaculture or biodynamic farming, you don't need to use pesticides due to the synergistic effect of being in a biodiverse ecosystem. And I feel like humans are like this also, meaning if we're just around one person all the time, we're not getting enough biodiversity. We're not getting enough diversity in general. It's healthy for people to meet new people, to be in new environments, to share different ideas that they haven't shared. And I felt personally, when I've been with just one person for a very long period of time, when I actually go out and I find myself around different people and in new environments, I feel almost like a healing. It's something that's very uplifting to me, and it invigorates me and brings more excitement into my life. And I feel like this is common for a lot of people. Now, granted, there are some people that are maybe more introverted that don't like to go converse and be out and explore with other people, but at least some sort of biodiversity, because when you're with just one person all the time, it actually starts to breed irritation. And you see this with couples that have been together for a really long time, but they don't really spend much time apart, is they get irritated with each other, right? They're sleeping in the same bed, they're doing the same thing all the time, especially sometimes retired people, because they're not, separating for the workday, or people that maybe both work from home or work together. When people are together all the time, oftentimes it breeds irritation because people just want something different. You want to explore something different. And when you're always doing everything together, you don't really get that breathing space. See, one of the things that me and my partner do is we actually sleep in separate rooms. And what this does is this gives us the ability to have our own space. And then when we're sleeping, our energetic fields can rebalance and recalibrate themselves without needing to compensate for the other energy of the other person. And this seems really funny and weird to a lot of people, but actually what it does is it gives us the opportunity to have our own space, and then when we meet up and run into each other the next day, we're much more excited to see each other because it's like, it's like a fresh meeting. So if you think about what true freedom is in a relationship, and as far as I'm concerned, love is something that really encourages freedom, right? Love isn't something that's being locked down, it's something that encourages freedom. But if you ask what true freedom is having a relationship where you're together when you choose to be together, not just because you have to be together all the time, right? So if you're with somebody and you're not actually choosing to be with them, but the way that you've set your life up is that you're just always around each other all the time, you don't really have a choice, then is that really freedom? Well, I would argue that it isn't. So trying to create a lifestyle in which you're together when you choose to be together seems a lot healthier to me. Because think about that. It's really often that, people wouldn't actually choose to be with each other. Or maybe they want to be alone. Or maybe they come home from work and they just want to relax and not talk to anyone. But another person's there and they don't have that freedom to just, take that space and be alone. Well, I think that when people have that freedom, that they actually are able to do a lot more on their own to cultivate their own growth, to process the things that they need to process, and to distill the nectar from their life so that they can bring that nectar back to the relationship. This is another thing that happens is people, when they're so used to being with each other all the time, they start processing everything together. And the problem with that is that a lot of processing is actually better to be done alone. Now, I'm not saying all processing. A lot of relationship processing needs to be done as a couple. But a good amount of processing, especially in my experience, I'm actually better off processing it on my own. Meaning, I could be going through a particular thing during the day, and maybe I'm getting irritated, or maybe I'm just analyzing something. And if I get in the habit of always bringing that up to my partner and kind of pulling her into my process and what I'm going through, three things happen. The first thing is I basically waste her time. I pull her out of her space. This is something I could process on my own. I pull her out of her space and bring her into my process. So that's like an energetic irritation to her, especially if she was, in the flow or doing something that was important to her, right? So that's the first thing that goes on. The second thing is I oftentimes add time to the processing situation. Now, if I couldn't process it on my own, maybe it is something I need to involve her in. But a lot of the time, it's stuff that I can totally process on my own if I just take my time and work through it. But if I pull her into that, what happens is now I need to help her understand what's going on. So I have to explain everything that's going on. And in the explanation of it, oftentimes what happens is I make it a bigger problem than it actually was. And verbalizing this whole thing and going through it is something that takes more time. So I end up adding time to my processing session. And then the third thing that happens is, if I process something on my own, at the end of that processing, I will have kind of distilled the nectar, right? I will have came to a conclusion that transcends the question or transcends the issue that I had. And I will have distilled the nectar from that processing. Now, if I've done that on my own, then I can take that nectar and I can share the nectar with her at a later part of the day. But if I bring her through the processing situation, then she doesn't just get the nectar, she has to go through all the stuff too. So if you look at two people that are in a relationship, they're always dragging each other through their processes. Then, while they may come to a conclusion that's transcendent and have nectar from that processing, it's like both people have to work for it. As opposed to, each person doing their own processing and then just sharing the fruits of their processing with each other. And this is very much a good example of just what alone space does, right? When you're alone, you can work through a bunch of stuff and then you can come back to the relationship with the nectar and you can share the fruits of what you've experienced on your own. And then it's kind of like, one person goes out and picks the berries, someone else goes out and, chops the wood, and then they come back and then they eat berries by the fire, right? It's like you're both bringing something to the relationship that adds to the relationship. If you're together all the time, you're always watching the same things or doing the same things, there's no diversity between you, so there's less freshness, there's less newness to share with each other. One of the things that people love so much about new love relationships is that this person has had an entire life. And you don't know very much about them. They have all these new interesting things to share with you that are fresh and exciting, right? But if you've been together for, 5, 6, 7, 10 years, and you guys have been doing the same thing all the time, there's not very much to share or talk about. But it's really exciting when you guys go in your opposite directions and experience life, process it in your own way, and then come back with the distillations of your experience. This adds a lot to the relationship and makes it a lot more exciting. So as far as taking space goes, what I recommend is on a regular basis, having days apart or going on vacations separately, 3 or 4 days. Me and my partner often are going on separate vacations. She's going out to a retreat for 5 days. Later on this summer, I'm going to be going for like 10 days to go visit my mother and some other friends to work on some music. So taking that space apart is really, really powerful because when you truly love each other, what happens is that grows the magnet. You start actually really appreciating the person. You start appreciating the nuances and the things that they bring to your life because you're able to get a breather from it, go experience something new, and then actually start thinking about all the things that you appreciate about that person so that when you come back together, the fire is stronger. It's like eating food, right? It's like you stop eating when you're full. Just because you're full from your favorite food doesn't mean you don't love your favorite food. It just means you want to wait till you're hungry again to eat it. It's the same kind of thing. And people get this confused, especially people that have codependent tendencies. They think that if you're not willing to be around the person all the time, that you don't actually love them. And they might feel threatened by the idea of being separate for whatever reason, or insecurity they may have. But they might actually be justifying that by saying, well, no, I love you. I just want to be around you all the time. And that can be very smothering to somebody in a relationship. So if you're the kind of person that feels like you need to be around your partner all the time, you should pay attention to that because chances are your partner's probably wanting some space. So learning how to be on your own, learning how to take time for yourself and be comfortable in yourself and go explore the world, have your own adventures. This is extremely healthy for you as an individual and then also for the dynamics of your relationship. So if you have any questions or comments about this, go ahead and put them in the comments below. If you want to hear more content like this, I'm excited to share more content with you. This is a large conversation. We could go on these topics quite a bit. So thanks for tuning in. This is Patrick Hayes. Like, subscribe, share with your friends, and I'll talk to you next time. One love.